There's a pain quieter than a scream and more terrible than a blow, when you're devalued not by words, but by a complete lack of response. You speak, and it's as if into a void. You're not heard, not noticed, not thanked. And this hurts more than outright aggression, because you invested, you tried, you were real, and in response there's coldness, ridicule, indifference, and sometimes even worse. They pretend you don't exist. This isn't just an insult. It's a slow, drawn-out slaughter of self-esteem. Before you learn how to break this cycle once and for all, subscribe. Below are 5 rules that change everything. The Stoics called this disrespect for your inner logos, the very core that makes you a person. Devaluation isn't just rudeness. It's an infringement on your right to be significant. But here's the paradox. You're not devalued by those who are stronger. You're devalued by those to whom you've given that power. You've given in, forgiven, explained, accommodated, and then you do it again. And now you're in a position where every word you say is worthless, because it's become a habit, not a rarity. But a Stoic doesn't beg for his value. He doesn't explain why he's worthy of respect. He knows that explaining is already a humiliation. He remains silent. He withdraws. He takes a step back. And for the first time, he allows the world to feel his absence. Because silence isn't weakness. It's a signal. It's a boundary. It's a challenge. It's the moment when you stop fighting for attention and begin to build the distance where true respect is born. If you're not appreciated, don't raise your voice. Raise your price. And then you'll learn how to do it in the language of Stoicism. Bloodlessly, coldly, but with such an inner strength that it's impossible not to feel. Rule number 1. Silence is your response to devaluation. The world is designed in such a way that for every reaction you make, there's an observer assessing your self-control or how easily you can be manipulated. When you're devalued, your first impulse screams, "Explain, prove, answer." But the Stoic teaches otherwise. If you're not respected, don't speak. Shut up. Because every word spoken in an attempt to regain your significance only weakens you in the eyes of the one who has already devalued you. And the more you speak, the less valuable you become. Because in this world, silence is the most prized thing, the one that conveys strength. Silence is a cold form of power. It's as if you're erecting an invisible barrier between yourself and the offender. No further action is possible. And if you save face without explaining or justifying yourself, you're doing the most important thing, showing that your value is not up for debate. People are acutely aware of the moment when their access to someone else's energy is blocked. And that's when they first begin to understand how much that energy was truly worth. You may be belittled, ridiculed, ignored, but your silence will act like an ice shield. You offer no emotion, no arguments, no weakness, only a pause. Only a lack of reaction. Only silence, which sounds louder than any hysteria. Epictetus said, "Let your actions speak for you instead of fruitless arguments, because they are created only to make you lose yourself." And it's true more often than not, you start losing precisely with the first attempt to justify yourself, with the first desire to prove something. A Stoic acts differently. He doesn't chase attention. He withdraws not physically but internally. He stops reacting, stops giving of himself. And that's when real magic happens. Where there was irritation and depression before, an anxious feeling of loss suddenly appears, because no one truly values what is too accessible. But as soon as your voice disappears, everyone suddenly wants it back. This is not revenge or manipulation. This is a boundary, one that is drawn not by words, but by absence. Silence is not a denial of oneself. It is an act of self-respect that requires no audience. There is no theater in it. There is only you and the realization of a simple truth. If you are not heard, perhaps the best solution is to remain silent, so that they will begin to listen to you again. In silence. Rule 2. Leaving is an act of self-respect, not weakness. People don't leave because they're weak. They leave because they're strong enough to no longer stay where they're being destroyed. In a culture of endless explanations, compromises, and give me another chance, leaving is often perceived as a defeat. But a Stoic sees it quite differently. Leaving isn't an escape. It's a boundary embodied in action. It's a choice not to fight for a place in someone else's world if that world doesn't respect your presence. If you're being devalued, don't argue, disappear. No scandal, no big words, no drama. You can leave quietly, but it will resonate loudly, because where your energy once was, a void begins. And emptiness is a powerful teacher. Faced with the absence of what seemed self-evident, a person begins for the first time to understand what they've truly lost. And then your silence turns into a mirror, and your departure becomes a cold challenge. Try it without me now. The Stoic leaves not because he can't stay, but because he knows the value of himself and his time. He doesn't sacrifice himself for the role that was imposed on him. He simply stops participating in the performance in which he was used as a character. He doesn't fight for attention, he stops being the background, and that's why he himself becomes the stage. It's important to understand, leaving is not the destruction of a relationship. It is the destruction of the illusion that this relationship had value without respect. Sometimes, to begin to respect yourself, you need to disappear from a place where your presence has long been convenient, but has ceased to be significant. This is painful, but staying and watching yourself slowly lose self-respect is even more painful. Seneca wrote, "A sage never stays where it is impossible to live with dignity." This is not about comfort. It is about honor. If your dignity has no place here, then it's time to leave. Because staying where you are not respected is not strength. It is dependence. But the Stoic chooses freedom from attachment. He chooses his own worth, even if it means being alone for a while. Rule 3. Don't educate, show the consequences. When you're devalued, your first instinct is to explain, to get through to them, to put them in their place. But Stoicism says otherwise. Don't educate those who have already made the choice to disrespect you. Show the consequences not with words, but with actions. Not with lectures, but with distance. People change not after your lectures, but after they actually experience the loss of your warmth, attention, and care. This is the only thing that can truly stir their consciousness. A Stoic knows, an explanation without consequences is an invitation to repeat everything all over again. Every time you say, "I'm hurt, I'm offended, this is not right," and yet you stay anyway, you create a dynamic in which your no means nothing, and therefore your value dissolves over time. People begin to perceive you as an emotional donor. You give, you endure, you explain, and then you give again. But a Stoic does things differently. They withdraw their participation, coldly, without scandal, without accusations. Simply disappears from the game that has been played with them for too long. This is the highest form of response, a reaction through absence. When you are devalued, don't argue, disappear. Stop calling. Stop keeping the conversation going. Stop investing. Stop trying to save the relationship alone. Let the other person ask themselves, where did it all go? And that's when true reevaluation begins, because it is precisely where your involvement disappears that the other person's growth begins, if such a growth is even possible. A Stoic doesn't take revenge. He doesn't strike back. He creates conditions in which the other person becomes unbearable without your light. But if the person doesn't want to change, the Stoic doesn't return. He doesn't beg for love or fight for attention. He simply moves on with dignity. And in doing so, he leaves behind the most powerful message possible. I can't be devalued because I'm no longer part of this game. Epictetus said, if you want someone to understand the true value of something, take away what they're used to getting for free. Not because you're cruel, but because you're no longer willing to be convenient. This is the essence of Stoic justice. Not changing yourself for others, but changing your behavior for the sake of self-respect. Rule number 4. Calm is more frightening than any scandal. The world is accustomed to storms, to outbursts, hysterics, screaming. When you're devalued, they expect an explosion. Anger, excuses, attempts to prove something. But a Stoic knows, calm in response to injustice is a form of supreme dominance. It's a sign that you're not in control of the situation, you're above it. And nothing frightens a person more than your cold imperturbability at the very moment they expect to see you hurt. Scandal is predictable. Scandal can be directed, provoked, used against you. But calm is the unknown. It's a silent refusal to play the familiar game. And then the other person begins to feel anxious because their behavior is losing its bearings. Your reaction doesn't fit into the familiar pattern. And therein lies your strength. You don't raise your voice, you don't slam doors. You simply look straight into the eyes, calmly and coldly, as if there's a stone inside you. And this forces those who came to destroy you to retreat. Seneca wrote, "No one has power over someone who doesn't give them a reason to be powered over themselves." Your silence is armor. Your control over your face, voice, and gestures is a signal. You've already made up your mind. And if someone was hoping to rock your emotions, to prey on your guilt or weakness, they're suddenly faced with a mirror that reflects only themselves. Because a Stoic doesn't play with feelings where there's no mutual respect. Being calm doesn't mean being cold. It means being selective in giving yourself, not wasting your soul on every slight, not giving warmth to someone who responds with coldness. Calm is a mark you stamp on yourself with your silence. It's a look that says without words, "You couldn't destroy me. You couldn't even hurt me." And if you're truly wounded, a Stoic still won't show it right away. They'll retreat and bandage their wounds in solitude. They'll grieve but not flaunt it. Because for a Stoic, emotion is an intimate domain, inaccessible to those who haven't earned it. It's not pretense. It's discipline. We've gotten to the heart of the matter, and if you've read this far, subscribe. What follows is a rule that upends our entire understanding of what it means to prove your worth. Rule 5. If you have to explain your worth, you've already lost. The moment you start proving your worth, you've already lost, because true worth isn't proven. It's either felt or ignored. A Stoic knows that if someone doesn't see your depth, your monologue won't open their eyes. It will only make one thing obvious. You're trying too hard to be accepted where you're not respected. The thirst for recognition is a trap for the mind, a subtle form of dependency. Once you explain why you're worthy, you'll be judged as a commodity, a service, a temporary resource. A Stoic isn't a commodity. He doesn't list his virtues. He's simply present or gone. His behavior requires no explanation because it's rooted in self-respect. And if he's not noticed, he doesn't say, "Look at me." He remains silent, and by doing so, he says, "It means you're not meant to see." Explanations diminish value. Every argument in defense of one's own significance diminishes it. Value is like silence. The more noise there is, the harder it is to hear. But when you simply leave without shouting, without insults, without explanatory notes, the effect of absence begins. And only then do people begin to feel they've lost something important, because truly precious things are always realized later, not in the moment of their presence. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't strive to be understood. It's enough to be in harmony with your own nature." This is the main lesson. Value is not a strategy, but a state. It can't be imposed, it can't be trained, it can't be bought with someone else's attention. You can be the most caring, the most devoted, the most attentive person, and still go unnoticed if it doesn't fit with someone else's expectations. So your task is not to change someone else's perception. Your task is not to betray yourself for someone else's recognition. The Stoic doesn't explain his value because he is busy living it. He takes action, is present consciously, invests, but does not demean himself. And if he's not understood, he doesn't cry out or break. He turns and moves on to where people see without words, respect without instructions, feel without the need to be convinced. You don't have to be convenient, explainable, or understandable to everyone. You have to be whole. You shouldn't be valued for your efforts. You should be valued for who you are in your silence, in your withdrawal, in your boundaries. If someone demands that you prove your worth, they've already made the choice not to see you. And that means proving yourself means losing yourself. Stoicism isn't about pretending to be strong. It's about not becoming weak for the sake of others' attention. It's a philosophy of inner power, a look in which calm speaks louder than hysteria, a step back that forces the whole world to follow, a pause after which your value becomes clear without a word. You don't need to explain anything. You need to be so confidently yourself that your very absence speaks louder than any words ever spoken. If you recognize yourself in this text, subscribe to the channel. Here we learn not to fight for love, but to be worthy of it without fighting. We learn to speak without yelling, to leave without hysteria, and to be valuable without anyone's permission.